Hey everyone, Kenya Moses here. I'm so excited to be sitting down today with an amazing gentleman by the name of Roark O'Neill. He is a commercial and residential real estate agent here in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm just really excited to pick his brain, find out, how do I get into the real estate game and have some fun. So welcome, Roark. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you, Kenya. I appreciate the opportunity to help you better understand this game we call real estate.
Well, thank you. Okay, so my first question, obligatory, I ask everyone. So how did you get into real estate?
I got into real estate about 22 years ago at a point in my life where I needed to make money, good money. At that point in time, there were only two real good options. One was real estate. The other was financial or stock market related. Just happened to be online in 1996 when the internet thing sort of started becoming public and saw an ad, sell houses. I've been hustling my entire life. I figured, why not hustle real estate?
Yeah, I've thought about it in my years too, and I actually went the financial route. I was a financial advisor for many, many, many years, and sometimes I wonder, had I gone the real estate route, things have turned out differently. But you know what? I love my life, so it's all good. So we're just gonna dive in here and just start picking your brain. So real estate has different areas, right? So we talked about the commercial side and we have the residential side. And can you tell us a little bit more about the differences between the two and what constitutes a commercial property versus a residential property?
So there's no real difference between residential real estate and commercial real estate. Notice the end of the tagline, real estate. Real estate is likely every person's largest investment and the most money required or largest money decision they'll ever make. Folks get nervous in that regard. Different types of real estate. Residential is you'd look at a house, you'd look at a condo, you'd look at a boat. Commercial real estate, people typically think 5+ residential units, office buildings, retail space, warehouses, and the like. The reality to it is the definition of commercial real estate being any real estate used for purposes of investment. Residential real estate, you typically think, I'm going to live in it.
Right.
That does not preclude you from buying a house and renting it out as an investment property or your commercial real estate.
Okay, so let me get this clear. So if I'm going to live on the property, then that is residential, right? But if I purchase a home, say it's a 3-bedroom, can it be a 3-bedroom?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so a 3-bedroom home, and my sole purpose is to rent that out to a tenant, that is considered commercial.
Yes.
And so I would need to go through an agent who works specifically with commercial and not residential.
That is not correct.
Oh, okay.
Any licensed real estate person in the state of California can help you with either residential real estate or commercial real estate. The difference being is you have to have the know-how to get transactions done in order to avoid any issues down the road that might come back and bite you.
Okay, so is it a little bit more lengthy process to purchasing a home or building for commercial purposes than it is for living in?
Yes and no. If you think of the real estate market in general, both commercial and residential, the residential side of real estate is much larger than the commercial side of real estate. Therefore, many, 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 many more opportunities. When you think of commercial real estate, the limited amount of commercial real estate that there is limits your opportunity on what you can buy. Ergo, not as much being available for sale or for lease when you're ready.
Okay. So we were talking earlier before we started the podcast, and I was saying that I have an interest in commercial real estate and just didn't really know what were the first steps, how do I make that happen? So if I decided today, Roark, I want to have some rental property, what is my first step to getting that started?
Your first step to buying rental property is figuring out how much money you have down. And once you know how much money you have down, you can then figure out what can I buy. So for example, if you only have $25,000 to purchase commercial property, you have to look at it and analyze the commercial property to determine what is the asking price. what are the income and expenses of that asset. If the asset is only $100,000 and you only have $25,000, does the net income, which is the money you receive after paying all of the expenses, is that net income sufficient enough by a multiple of 1.25, even 1.5 would be better, to support the debt? And if it is, then you likely qualify for traditional financing. And the numbers are exponential by a multiple of 10 or 100. So maybe it's $1 million property, maybe it's a $10 million property. The lenders will look at not only you personally for what your qualifications are, but they will also look at the asset and determine what other income the asset can bring to the table to support the debt.
Okay. Now, say I no longer want to rent it. Say I want to flip it. Is there any other stipulations around that type of transaction, if that's the intention?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
It's all a function of what can you buy, and once it's yours, you, at your discretion, can do with it what you want, as long as you've not obligated yourself otherwise legally through financial documentation that says you are limited to doing X, Y, Z. Some loans are not allowed to be paid off in a certain period of time, and while others, you can pay them off at any point in time.
I see. As you know, this is a podcast for single moms, and in addition to just learning about real estate in general and commercial and residential, if someone was interested in getting started in real estate, like, do you have any advice for women out there who might be thinking, I actually want to become an agent and start selling properties?
So if you want to become an agent, the best way to start is to look at the California Department of Real Estate website and become a real estate agent. It's not as simple a process as most think, but it does take some time. So get on the California Department of Real Estate website and look, and then start asking around, who do you know in real estate? What does it take? Can somebody help me? What offices are in your neighborhood? Is that where you want to work? Or maybe you want to work across the bay or North Bay or South Bay. Any and all of it is possible. It just takes time to get there.
Okay. And are there certain requirements that need to be met?
There are educational requirements which need to be met, which is why it takes time to get there.
So if you were to give your top 3 tips for having the smoothest transaction possible in any kind of real estate deal, whether it's residential or commercial, speaking to a potential buyer, what would you say?
You need to determine what your purchasing power is and qualification, meaning you need to know that you can do it. It doesn't make sense to go look at property without knowing you can actually put the offer in. It's like teasing yourself. Why bother? The best thing to do is go talk with a banker, whether it's a residential mortgage broker, a commercial mortgage broker, or your bank. Go to your favorite bank and talk to them. And give them a sense of what you want to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what other monies you have besides what might be at that in particular bank, what other assets, what other expenses, so that you can get the ball rolling to determine what you might actually qualify for.
Okay.
That's the biggest thing.
That's the biggest thing. And I know this is probably a question more for a mortgage broker specializing in real estate and all that good stuff. But just thinking about like different programs that might be available for those who may not have like the entire down payment and that sort of thing.
Actually, on residential property, as long as you're going to live in the property, there are many programs depending upon one's financial capability, one's credit history, job history, and so on. But you're correct. You would need to talk to a mortgage broker of some sort to determine what program you would qualify for. Commercial real estate's a bit different. You actually need to have that 20 to 50% down payment depending on how well qualified the asset is. So if the asset is actually throwing off a lot of positive cash flow that your mortgage broker can bring back into the equation to support the debt, the bank will give you that lower down payment, but you need typically minimum 20% down. Okay. Whereas residential down payments, I believe there are programs for as little as 3% or 5% down, and Veterans Administration is 0% down.
Wonderful. That's really great information. Okay, so I'm going to sidetrack just a little bit. So, Roark, you're very much in your community, and you do a lot of community service work. Tell us a little bit about that. I always like to hear more about the person and then I'm taking totally off guard here.
So I'm very actively involved in the community, both in terms of family. I've been coaching kids sports teams for many, many years. I am the current president of the South of Market Rotary Club and have been involved with the Rotary Club for quite a long time. I grew up poor, one of 7 children. My father worked. My mother did not, because she was working taking care of children in San Francisco. And not having all that much prior to getting into real estate, where I now have something, I feel it's only appropriate to give back. And that's how I do it. I run a couple of community service projects for my Rotary Club. We are at the food bank once a month. I run a Bike for Vet program, which just was recognized from the veterans side of things as their small top project. And there's a lot of different other organizations we help support. A Woman's Place is a homeless shelter in the South of Market area. There are a couple of public schools, Bessie Carmichael, Malcolm X, and others that we help support in terms of delivering third graders dictionaries, a clothing closet, and so on. There's much more than that.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for all of your amazingness and your service. It's more of us need to be out in our communities and supporting it in the ways that we can.
I agree completely. The thing to keep in mind is you get more out of life by giving into it.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much. Now, before we cast off, how can our listeners reach out to you? So if they're interested in whether it's residential or commercial properties, how would they be able to get a hold of you?
So under the Keller Williams umbrella, I am part of Team Invest SF, where we help clients develop wealth. That's Suzanne, Michael, and Roark, helping clients develop wealth. My email address is roark@investsf, ROARK @INVESTSF.com. The best thing to do would be send me an email with multiple day and times that you're available to speak, so that we can calendar time to make sure you get the time you need to understand, ask, and answer those questions. Alternatively, if you're in a pinch, you could always try my cell phone, 415-308-5085. But my time might be limited on the phone.
Wonderful. So hopefully we get some people giving you a call and some new clients come in. But I'm so grateful for you being here with me today. This is a pleasure. I learned a lot, and I know I'm going to continue to want to pick your brain later. All of the information that Roark spoke about today, I'll put on the website. So all you mamas out there, if you want to learn more about commercial and residential real estate, please take a look.
One more thing. Keep in mind, if you're interested, the only bad questions are the ones you don't ask.
Exactly.
It's all about education.
Yes, there is no silly question, right? If you don't ask, you'll never know. So thank you so much, Roark, and I'm sure we'll have you back on here again, if he's willing.
Thank you, Kenya.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll see you soon.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Single Mama's Guide podcast, be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Google Play. Share your insights, takeaways, and inspiration by following the Single Mama's Guide on Instagram and Facebook.